Hello, welcome to Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. Today's an exciting day. I'm joined by the Twitch chat, as you can see here. We've just been discussing, and I'm about to talk to you about the new regiments and armies of renown that are coming out for Age of Sigmar, and it is a doozy. There's one in here that is so spicy, it's got the internet frothing. So what am I talking about? Well, there is a community article that's been brought out by Games Workshop, but in addition to this, we've got the entire contents of the upcoming Dawnbringers book that's been leaked online. So let's just quickly talk about this for a moment and can see what we got. It seems in this new book coming up, we've both got Armies of Renown and Regiments of Renown. So we started out with Regiments of Renown in Dawnbringers Book 1, then we flipped to Armies of Renown. Now we're doing a side-by-side. So just to remind you, Armies of Renown are their own separate army, which have their own rules, and they don't have allegiance abilities like your normal army. It's basically being able to use your models from one army and use it in a separate army, different rules. And then a Regiment of Renown is where one of your armies, a selection of models which are dictated by the Regiment of Renown, can be used in another army that's not its own army. So if you've got a Flesh Eater Courts Regiment of Renown, can't use it in Flesh Eater Courts, but can use it in the other death factions. The chat, and I wonder what you think at home, so let me know in the YouTube comments. The chat are dead set that this is like a spicy way. If you collect, for instance, Soulblight Gravelords, but then you see that there's an amazing Regiment of Renown for Flesh Eater Courts, so you collect Nighthaunt, yeah, and then there's a great Flesh Eater Courts Regiment of Renown. You think, yeah, I might pick that up, play it in my army, and then in Age of Sigmar 4, when Regiments of Renown go away, you're just left with some dudes, and you're like, oh, I might as well finish my Flesh Eater Courts collection. That's what chat thinks, okay? I'm not sure about anything else. Anyway, this is a contents page. In the contents page, we can see that there's an Army of Renown for the Scions of New Lamia, and that's going to be featuring that new model that we saw released for Soulblight Gravelords and Sekar, the Fang of New Lamia. Then there's a Regiment of Renown called Neferata's Royal Echelon, another Regiment of Renown called the Summer King's Entourage, which we will talk about in a bit. Then there is a Regiment of Renown, the Saturine Garrison, the Regiment of Renown, the Lich's Hand, Regiment of Renown, Signs of the Necropolis, and Regiment of Renown, the Sorrowmorn Choir. Each one of these Regiments of Renown is going to be led by one of the Mortarchs. The Mortarchs are the Lieutenants to Nagash. The Death Grand Alliance is very, very structured. At the top, you have Nagash. He's the king. He's the boss. And then underneath Nagash, he has his lieutenants or he has his Mortarchs. So you've got Manfred, easily the coolest Mortarch since The Crow, featuring Brandon Lee. Then you've got the new Mortarch Ushran. You've got Neferata. You've got everyone's absolutely favorite failed Harry Potter wizard, Manfred. Not Manfred, Arcan. That's who I'm talking about. Yeah, I would say Mortarchs need to unionize. I agree. So yeah, there are 6 Mortarchs, I think, in total. Okay, so that's what we see. So you're going to be able to take each one of those different Mortarchs and Mortarch Regiments of Renown in one of the other death factions. So if you're a death player, you're eating really well when this book comes out. You've got loads of new ways. If you've got multiple death armies, you can play your normal, Flesh Eater Courts with some Nighthaunt in there. You can play some Nighthaunt with some Flesh Eater Courts in there. You've got loads of stuff to do, which is kind of cool. So that's what we're going to see coming up, and as well as obviously the continuing story of the Dawnbringer Crusade. So Warhammer Community has actually already released an article telling us about some of the details for what these armies are, and so we're going to talk about them now. First one is the one featuring Ushran, and this is actually pretty wild that Ushran gets his entire own one. It's kind of odd to see this brand new released giant monster creature being able to be used in another army. Like, let him live in his own army for a bit first before he's, out there gallivanting around with some Nighthaunt bros. It feels weird. But Ushran, you get Ushran, 10 Crypt Guard, and 3 Morbeg Knights are in the Summer King's Entourage, which again is a Regiment of Renown. So you can use it in another army, but not in a Flesh Eater Courts army. And what you get for this is you get +1 attack characteristic melee weapons used by units in this Regiment of Renown while they're wholly within 12 inches of Ushran in this regiment, which is like fine. You don't get all of the allegiance abilities for these characters, which they're kind of pointed and costed to do those things, which is going to become very relevant when we talk about the Nighthaunt one. But ultimately, having a monster, I don't know about you, but there's some armies, Nighthaunt, who really want to try and stop the enemy from being able to use an all-out defense. So having access to raw finally is pretty spicy. I'm going to say this right now. So that's pretty good. Now, the one that I think has got everyone hype, absolutely hype. And there's loads of things about this. It's a regiment renowned, so it's going to cost you lots of points. There's loads of stuff. Okay, but the one that's got everyone hype is the new Larmian one. So Neferata weaves wicked schemes all across the mortal realms. One such pawn is even nestled within Ushan's royal court. In battle, she commands Neferata's royal echelon, a bodyguard of black knights and death rattle skeletons. But her real power comes from the meticulous plans she executes, often countless years in the making. Get ready for this. This regiment renown gets the Blood Queen's will. This is huge. It grants a once per battle ability in the battle shock phase to replace the battle tactic that's been picked and replace it with one that hasn't been completed. Let's just talk about the timing. In the battle shock phase, so you've taken your turn, okay, you've done all your stuff, and you're like, I'm at the battle shock phase. Time for me to see if I've scored my battle tactic, okay? But no, if you failed it, you can just replace, only once per battle though, you can replace it, the one that hasn't been completed, even if it was one that failed earlier in the battle. So I can try Magical Dominance turn 1, fail it, succeed it in turn 2, but having chosen a different battle tactic. Then when it comes to the end of the turn, just be like, actually, Magical Dominance, 2 points for me. Even if it was one that failed earlier, it's complex. the community article then goes on to say it's a complex gambit, which I'm gonna disagree with, that it's a complex gambit, but there we go. It's a complex gambit, apparently. So that's the Blood Queen's will. Now, I would say that there's like two things. Number one, let's get pitchforks, okay? And let's immediately kick off. But number two, let's maybe lower those pitchforks a tiny bit, and maybe let's just talk about the fact it's a regiment renown. They won't get any allegiance abilities, which, Soulblight Gravelords do so well because of their allegiance abilities in many ways. Neferata is still great, though, in any army. She's got a -1 to hit aura. She's a great caster. She's got the ability to auto-slay stuff. She's pretty good, I'm going to say. I think that's interesting. So I would say pitchfork a bit, but just don't all the way in. Just a light jab in is what I'm going to go for, like a casual pitchfork in, which is interesting. And I think there's loads more to talk about that. Like more of a deep dive should be done in the future on that subject. Now the next one is Lady Alinda's Sorrowmourn Choir, which will send a shiver up the spine of the boldest warriors. The Mortarch of Grief and her Dreadside Harridans and Mimron Banshees are consummate harvests of sorrow, terrifying foes within 3 inches. So they cannot receive commands in the battle shot phase, and they also become emboldened as they rush into combat to feed on despair. Receiving the Strike First effect. Now, I've got to say, Nighthaunt are already not doing well in the meta, and it's fair to say they haven't been doing very well in games for a long time. If you look at the TSN stats, which you can find on wargamer.com, you'll see that the win rate's fairly low. It's not that impressive. Okay, so one of the main reasons that Nighthaunt are able to do well or not do well is because of their allegiance abilities, retreat and charge, ethereal, and a bunch of other stuff. But are the Nighthaunt still ethereal? No, like they wouldn't still be ethereal because their allegiance abilities, and this is a regiment of renown, so you wouldn't be able to use their allegiance abilities because they're regiments of renown. Therefore, they're very, very bad. Like, they're not good with their actual allegiance abilities in Nighthaunt. So, as a regiment renown in another army, right, not great. So, the difference between these is staggering. Like, being able to, like, auto-complete a battle tactic, which you've already discovered whether or not you've done at the end of the turn. It's only once per battle. And then not even getting your allegiance abilities are pretty wild. So, I think I've got to just kind of wrap this up and say that I think one of the things that's great about this is it gives collectors and people, like, because if you're into the Death Faction, you probably, love the TV show Wednesday and always been a big Addams Family fan. And, My Chemical Romance is a great band. When I was a young boy. But you're probably looking for a reason to collect into your ghost army some vampires anyway. So I would say one of the things that's cool about Regiments of Renown is it really gives you a excuse to kind of buy these in and purchase them. I will caveat that and say that please be conscious that Age of Sigmar 4 is only in the summer, so it's not that far away. So if you buy a Regiment of Renown, can you build, paint it, and get enough playtime out of it before it more than likely is going to go away in Age of Sigmar 4? It might not go away in Age of Sigmar 4, but it's a possibility, and I don't want you to be buying stuff that kind of then just feels a bit useless end of the day. But if you're already collecting, like wanting to start one of the other death factions, this might be a great way to like lead into it. So I am interested to know what people think about Regiments of Renown, if they're really excited. Some of them have featured fairly heavily in events. For example, the Rabble-Rouser Battalion has been particularly popular in Gargant factions, and people have really enjoyed that as well. The sensationally and unnecessarily techie Khorne armies have really benefited from the Tzeentch Regiment of Renown, which is really doesn't feel like the ludonarrative dissonance that I have in the very technical and complicated playstyle of Khorne, the god of murder and blood, has benefited significantly from the inclusion of a Tzeentch wizard cabal. Feels odd, is all I'm going to say. But that has happened. So there's been some fun, maybe narratively dissonant combinations, and been some very narratively congruent, combinations, and they've all been fairly interesting, and I kind of like it. I got to say, one of the things Age of Sigmar needs right now is more content. That's what I'm going to say. It needs more content. It doesn't need changing content. What I mean by that is I don't need loads of new battle tomes. I don't need to just keep re-updating the rules. I don't need any of that. But more content like this is excellent, because I think the game needs it. I think, like, I want to see new, like, I really like Regiments of Renown, Armies of Renown. Give me an entire new way to play my army 11 out of 10. I think that's exactly what Age of Sigmar needs. A bit of variety, and the ability to like play more non-linearly, because that's how battle tomes are set up, would be great. Anyway, I'd love to know what you think. Chat has been great. We've had a fun time. Thanks everyone much for subscribing. And thank you to everyone that was with me on Patreon. I literally couldn't live without you. You're the best. Love you so much. Bye.